I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators to make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Brian Cobb, Chief Innovation Officer, CVG International Airport, and Keynote at this year's SAE AeroTech Conference. On today's episode, Brian shares how CVG has become a real-world lab for advanced research and operational improvement. We'll go beyond technology to explore how airports can think differently and innovate with purpose. We hope you enjoy this episode. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Grayson. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you here, sir, because the CVG has a reputation. You invest in the future, you deploy the future, you just don't talk about the future. How did this do-it attitude start at CVG? Because it's world known that you actually do things.
Well, for those of us that have been around a while, you might remember Skunkworks. So we sometimes it's not too bad to fly under the radar and basically get things accomplished and then reveal yourself as to what you've done. But thanks for the compliment. Usually when you hear, you've developed a reputation, initially it's the shock and awe, but once you hear it's positive, we're certainly accolades all around. So we appreciate that.
Why did CVG first decide to lean into the future and look at new and emerging technologies, pilot them, test them, and in some cases commercialize them on your property?
Yeah, great question, Grayson. And we get asked this question quite a bit. Just presented last week at a different conference and walked everyone through. And these were my colleagues, by the way, all airports, still wondering, how did we find our way into this? If you look back to the history of CVG, we were a hub for a major passenger airline. And then suddenly the bottom fell out. And when I say the bottom fell out, the economy changed. And those of us in aviation, we understand it's cyclical in nature. So one day we had a hub, the next day we didn't. We became a focus market. So we literally dropped from roughly about 700 flights a day to well below 200. So you talk about shock and awe. Now, unfortunately, it's the evolution of a business sometimes. I would say, by all accounts, in the media, we came out as one of the fastest recovering airports in the US that went through a Dehub exercise. And credit to our leadership and our board at the time, they very much saw the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. Frankly, at a community level, we were known as that airline hub and not referred to as CVG. So we recognized we really had to kind of create a brand about ourselves. Why? Because we're surrounded by 5 competing airports. We don't have light rail in the region. So anyone that's coming to the airport is probably driving their car. And they have a choice when they pull out of their driveway. Are they coming to CVG or are they coming to a competing airport? So that really established, if you look at very well-known brands, well, what are we going to do to make sure the consumer comes back to us and not a competing airport? And that's how we ended up actually stumbling into some technology developments.
You've become a brand now. As I said earlier, you're world's renowned for your innovation and the technologies deployed there. Has that helped the business of CVG? Because the airport is a business at the end of the day. Has that reputation helped grow the business after the unfortunate circumstance that the airport went through?
Grayson, you absolutely nailed it. It is a business, and that's what we can't forget. My comment to colleagues has been, do we consider ourselves a utility or do we consider ourselves as a brand? When you start treating yourself as a brand and you recognize what the Fortune 100s, Fortune 500s, et cetera, have done with their brand development, it is absolutely trying to recognize what's the product that I produced yesterday, and I'm producing a better product today that will keep me ahead of the competition. That's really kind of the approach that we've taken to help staff understand, and really our friends and family that are traveling CVG, what's differentiating ourselves over the other competitors. So really, if it involves technology, if it involves the economics of the airport itself, I would say that is first and foremost. So what are we doing as an economic engine for the community to really help everyone understand this is what's elevating our community at large? It's not just selfishly about the airport.
You're providing a better product, hands down. And I want to highlight one of the, me as somebody who flies too much, one of the best things that you did and that your team did, you made my life easier because in 2014, you became the first airport to report TSA wait times. Bravo. Thank you. My anxiety went, it plummeted. Great idea. What was it like when you first sent that idea to the board? Hey, we want to report this. And then I have to ask on the other side, if you can even comment on it, what was the TSA thinking when you said, oh, we want to make this data public?
Grayson, again, once you knocked it out of the park. So you as the traveler, you addressed it spot on. It's the anxiety level. And we recognized if the anxiety is super high and your experience at the checkpoint is poor, you're going to walk away with a very poor image of who we are as an airport. And are you willing to come back and go through that pain and suffering again? Probably not. Or you're definitely, it's the classic bad product. You're going to tell 10 other individuals. At that time, if you think back to 2014, this is way before some of our newer, like TSA PreCheck didn't exist. The dogs were not in the checkpoint to actually accelerate your throughput. So, back then it was kind of a finger pointing exercise. It was our dominant carrier at the time and the TSA kind of pointing at each other to say, well, I'm not really responsible for the queue. So up until you reach the document checker, the TSA individual, or TSO as they're called, Transportation Security Officer, that was everything behind that is TSA. Everything in front of that is typically the airline if it's a large airport. We interjected, and that's right around when we were evolving into what's our brand about. And we really became the ombudsman that said, the friends and family that are living next to us that are flying our product, we have to take it upon ourselves to be responsible for what product we're delivering. So we're going to interject ourselves at the airport. What that means, we're not quite sure yet, but we're going to go find some solutions. And lo and behold, we found a solution first and foremost at Purdue University. And they were using Bluetooth scanners. So they would emit basically sniffers looking for Bluetooth signals. Well, think about your device. And back then, many of us had Bluetooth activated. We didn't know who the individual was, but it sniffed a signal. And we could start dropping dots on a virtual map that said, well, here's start and end. What's the difference between those two? And that's how we started coming up with wait times. But Purdue wasn't in the business of a commercialized product. So we went abroad. We found one that was in retail in Europe. And we invited them to be the first security checkpoint sniffer on those signals. Now, it wasn't tracking 100% of the passenger volume, but it was a sample size enough that it was super accurate. And that data alone gave us tremendous amount of insights to what our consumer was doing, what time they were showing up during all hours of the day, and what carrier they were probably flying, because we put those sniffers throughout the entire airport back then. So we've just continued to evolve that product. But yes, we did become the first airport, at least in the Americas, that had this technology deployed at the checkpoint and sharing that with the TSA to let them know how they were performing and sharing it with our consumer to lower in that anxiety.
You said that the key there, an individual has a bad airport experience, and I've had many, and there are airports that I avoid like the plague, and my wife tells everybody, don't go to this airport because the horrible experience that we had multiple times. So you're right about that, and then that multiplies. And so you took that anxiety, I'll say the realm of uncertainty. And you said, okay, we're going to put some data in that. We're going to let individuals know. When you did that, did you see passenger surveys where, oh, this is a greater experience? Did you start to see some of the passenger satisfaction go up at the airport after you implemented that technology?
Absolutely. First and foremost, let's go back to the TSA. So, in many respects, they're our customer too. And we were helping them understand, you have a product that you're producing. If I show up at CVG on a Tuesday and my wait time is 10 minutes, but I show up on a Thursday and it's 45 minutes, like, what should I ever expect from your brand? It's inconsistent. And then to your point, anxiety level, well, does Atlanta perform the same way as CVG? Now, maybe we were a little altruistic and we thought that perhaps we could make a change across the industry, and we're still working on it, I promise. But again, if you go to a lot of airports, now that has become commonplace on reporting what their wait times are, which comes back to the consumer. What did we see when we gave it to the TSA first and foremost? If you measure it, you can improve it. Well, sure enough, our wait times just continued to trickle down. And when we started it, we were at roughly about an hour, average 45 minutes, hour at peak. And then that came down to about 35, and then 20, and then 15. So those are phenomenal, phenomenal differences. Now, where did we see it on the consumer side? Back then, this thing called Twitter was either our friend or our foe. And trust me, my friend, it was foe a lot, where we were just torn apart. Now it comes back to, well, who's responsible for the checkpoint? Again, we raised our hand. We said, we're going to take that customer experience responsibility on. And our social media was not kind to us. We put the system in, and social media, frankly, went away. We rarely got, should I use the term trashed, on social about our wait time performance. Now, if you were go to like Google reviews today, one of the most common threads that you'll see through our Google reviews is the security experience, which is not only rewarding but heartwarming that we're doing the right thing and have been doing the right thing for quite a few years.
It's a pat on the back. It's a sign that the consumer respects you, that they're taking the time out of their day to write a review, that you're doing good when you're looking at this new technology. So let's just stay on this Bluetooth thing. You went to Purdue to find it, and then eventually went to Europe to find a commercial version of it. Is part of the job that you're doing as the Chief Innovation Officer, are you always on the hunt for new technologies that can improve the overall airport experience?
Always. And I know your guests will identify this. So I've been in aviation for 35 years. 20 years on the airline side, 15 on the airport side. And in both ecosystems, I would say when we were trying to improve the experience, we would go to the airport or airline store, Home Depot, and pull the same solution off the shelf that everyone else is using and say, well, it's got to work for us. And frankly, we learned the hard way that when we fell out of favor as that large hub, suddenly the solutions that worked for a large airport environment no longer worked for a medium-sized hub like CVG. So, wow, what did that imply on the IT side? Well, if you have to go through a bunch of hoops to try to modify that product, suddenly that product cost escalates rather high to try to make product improvements. When we should be asking ourselves, is that the right product fit for our marketplace? And if it's not, then why are we using it? And should we go elsewhere? And credit to the startup ecosystem. Startups, as we know, they're young, they're hungry. It's not perfect. It takes a lot of time, effort, and energy, but sometimes it works extremely well. And this is where I go back to finding these solutions was never about CVG. It was more about, can the product work in aviation? Can it work in an airport? And if it can, then how do we make sure that that product scales up to a large hub and scales down to a small hub? So that's very much been our premise behind our innovation programming, and making sure that when we start working with these companies, they're not coming at us just viewing us as the single customer. They're very much viewing it as a launch pad into aviation. And then I think a very important thread back to the listeners is it's recognizing we weren't talking just to startups in aviation. We were talking to startups that, frankly, we would kind of hide initially that we were an airport, because we didn't want them to come at us with blinders on saying, well, I don't have a product that fits your niche. Where we were saying, well, really, we're kind of a city within a city. So we have biological challenges on our airfield. We have consumer pipeline issues. We have complications around what's our future workforce look like. And ultimately, if there's shortages, how do we fill those gaps with robotics, not replacing staff, but actually filling gaps? Really, those kind of nuances.
When you're meeting with startups and you're saying, nope, we're not an airport, we're actually a mini city, are you looking for on-tarmac solutions, off-tarmac solutions, perimeter solutions, baggage solutions? What are you looking for?
All of the above. And that's rather nebulous, admittedly. I would say we've parsed it really into 4 verticals, and that's transport. So if it moves, we're interested. If it's in the air, if it's on the ground, we are absolutely interested. It falls in within our transport category. Connect. So if it connects a device or it connects a human to a device, we're interested. So think wearables, for example. On the secure side, we really pivoted when we first started this programming of Security at a city or at an airport is no longer about physical security. It's about cybersecurity as well. And aviation has a super big target on our back. So what are we doing from that perspective? And then the last one is really clean. And it kind of goes back to the security checkpoint aspect. I'll give you an example. You walk into a restaurant and that restaurant's dirty. You immediately form an opinion. Are you going to go back or are you even going to sit and eat? So the cleanliness of the airport, and this was way before the pandemic, the cleanliness of the airport was super high on our list to make sure that we were always knocking it out of the park. So that's just one aspect of clean, all the way to kind of back to the biological aspects. We have a tremendous amount of runoff at the airport. We have stormwater systems. So what are we doing at our stormwater treatment plant to make sure that when we release water back into the ecosystem, that it is super clean? So that's just another example of the clean spectrum.
So you have the four focus areas: transport, connect, secure, clean. Let's go into secure for a moment. I'm really curious because of sensors. And unfortunately, we've seen incidents around the world where individuals get into a secure space. And to put a human force out there is nearly impossible. Are you looking, or have you deployed sensor technology on the perimeter that your team can oversee and overview to protect against a potential breach?
Great question. We have, to some degree. So I would say we approach it as good, better, best. When we first sit down with a company, we'll ask them to look at a much smaller footprint and what's realistic. And it kind of goes back to scaling. If you can demonstrate in this small footprint, as opposed to trying to deploy something across the entire airport campus, bearing in mind our campus is 7,700 acres. So it's quite sizable. So there's an aspect of, is it even going to be affordable to deploy the technology that we're looking at? So let's deploy it on a much smaller scale, test it. And within this pilot testing period, typically 6 months, let's start putting paper to pen to paper to figure out what's the calculation that says, okay, here's what full scale looks like. Back to, have we deployed? One of the latest deployments that we've done is a company called Volon. They initially approached us for the proximity during the pandemic. So are you and I 6 feet apart? And frankly, we leaned in and said, that's nice, not interested. We actually see security implications on our campus to use it really as a roving badge. So just as many of us carry a badge like this around the airport, our approach was, how do we actually work with, say, transient workforce such as construction to wear this badge? We know when they're on site, how long they're on site, and if they're on an XYZ axis, so a multi-floor environment, where are they in that building? That at all times, if something were to occur, we can either alert them directly or they can alert us by pressing a 911 button of, I need assistance. So instead of going through this entire badging process for a construction worker that might be installing a wall for a few days, can we get by with that technology to really act as a sensor escort?
To me, and now going back to your business, because I have to keep going there, it lowers the risk threshold, which to me, on the business side, this is potential, could have a positive impact on the insurance costs. Because the insurance says, oh, well, who's on your property? Well, we don't know. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Insurance, by the way, we have this badge, and look, we can show you all the data in real time. So to me, that seems like it goes right back to the positive benefit for the business.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. Now, if it were only that easy, my friend. So this is the good, better, best, right? So good, test it. And you know as well as I do, and I'll give you a perfect example. At some point, somebody probably put an iPhone in your hand, and you may have been a skeptic. But at some point, it was proven to you of, okay, there is a personal, what we would refer to in business as an ROI, right? Return on investment. All right, this is worth me carrying this device at all times. So in this world, now we're looking at it as, okay, good. Can we establish some level of security awareness for people that typically are not necessarily badged? Bingo, it worked. Better is, all right, how do we scale this at a larger ecosystem? Can we actually put it on equipment? So trucks, lawnmowers, and we could, and we did. And now we're actually seeing where those assets are at all times. And then that third tier is, all right, well, what's the benefit? What is the true ROI that I'm getting out of all of this data set? And that data set suddenly becomes, if we are putting it on, let's say, mowers, grass cutting mowers, now we're getting usability time. And during seasonal, how long is it actually taking someone to cut that grass? And the individual that's typically cutting for us is a seasonal workforce laborer. So from that perspective, can we actually build in, all right, here's all of the data set that says, here's how many staff we actually need to go cut that area. Now, pull that thread one major step. What if we did robotics? And robotics could work 24 hours a day. So is there a cost offset? And where it becomes super fascinating, all the way back to your point, what about insurance? So, pre-call, we were talking about the FAA showing up on our doorstep. And typically when they show up, that becomes a little nerve-wracking, right? No, the group of 3 individuals from FAA R&D had reached out to us about our robotics programming because we were so far ahead. And they were very quick to say, look, we're not trying to shut you down. Because of the work that you've put into this on the air side, we really want to know all of the steps that you've taken to deploy this in a safe ecosystem and to get it running so smoothly. And then the critical part for us, Brian, is regulatory wise, how do we not slow progress, but at the same time, we're carefully stair-stepping in where, and reasonably so, we don't have a robot get hacked and suddenly be driven onto the airfield for a landing and departing aircraft, which I think we would all agree that's the worst case scenario. So, ironically, we were able to talk about this Volant tag and that it becomes really an ASD. So aircraft have pinging capability where the air traffic controller is looking at that aircraft and can monitor it, right? Well, what if we did that for the ground, for ground equipment, particularly for automation, for autonomous vehicles? Now we can actually track vehicles at all times to see where they're at. And if we had basically a master screen and a kill switch for each device, now we have an upskilled laborer. So someone that actually is not necessarily removed from that tug or that vehicle, but now they're standing behind in a secure responsibility and they're monitoring all of these autonomous vehicles, and they can kill switch if something were to go awry. That's the piece that the FAA was super fascinated with around what's the secure environment that we're building these ecosystems. And I would say reasonable thread, where does insurance play into all of this to make sure if we built these systems in, that what's the benefit on the insurance side of the house, be it cyber or be it physical?
Because from the FAA's perspective and the insurance perspective, they have a common denominator. They both want to eliminate risk. They fully agree on that. So I'm just going to call it supervised autonomy. The Wall Street Journal has this great term. They call it a robot wranglers that supervised them. When you have individuals that are overseeing the robotics that you've deployed to CVG, is it a 1-to-1 basis? Is it 1 human for 3 robots? What does that ratio look like for your deployments? And does it differ from on the air side to the non-air side?
Yeah, so we're very early into this, along with many of our colleagues in other industries worldwide. So where are we? Right now, I would contend we're 1 robot is 1 robot, and that's problematic. My point to our industry has been, no. We have multiple bots. We've already been down this road, and they're ingesting data. How do we get those bots to talk to each other? So this is where actually SAE comes in pretty significantly on establishing maybe language standards of how do systems talk to each other, because there's tremendous benefit in that. So again, imagine a mower that's outside and a tug that's delivering bags. If the mower is en route to the grass and sees, as our industry, aviation understands FOD or foreign object debris, if that mower sees debris on the ramp and it sends an all call to its other bots to say, don't come this way. Or better yet, how fascinating would it be if it could talk to the aircraft that says, I know you're assigned this gate and you're taxiing my direction, please hold. And we get into this autonomous workflow that's holding that aircraft before it ingests that FOD into the engine and makes costly damage. So that's the ecosystem that we're trying to build out that we were talking to the FAA around. Of course, insurance is still way out here trying to figure out where that plays in. But building this safe and secure ecosystem that says, number one, robotics company, no, we can't afford to have your engineers on site controlling one or two or three robots. We have got to upskill our staff. So instead of driving that baggage cart, we want them actually behind a screen monitoring multiple baggage carts. Now we're getting some efficiencies and we're getting upskilling capabilities. And then ultimately, can that individual control multiple bot platforms? And that's the critical piece on being able to have kind of like a standard bot language that's they're all talking to each other.
Is the ecosystem one of the things that you're going to touch on during your SAE AeroTech keynote on June 2nd? Is that one of the topics that we can expect you to discuss?
Oh, you bet. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out the fact that this is the 25th anniversary, if I'm correct. So no pressure there. On the 25th, let's think about all of the bits and pieces and the incredible wins that we've made in aviation over the past 25 years. And better yet, how many industries have supported us to get to this point 25 years later, all the way to the lunar excursion that we just had just a few weeks ago. Fascinating of what mankind has been able to accomplish just within our time frame. So from that perspective, it is multiple ecosystems working together and reaching across party lines to understand who's the OEM that we're working with and what does the OEM language from other industries, how do we support those? And it's critical to recognize how far aviation has supported other industries and really advanced the global economy, and then vice versa, how important the globe economics are back to aviation.
Aviation is what moves goods and moves humans, and at the end of the day, it enables global commerce. And in order to get there, you have to have an airport, regional airports, mid-market airport, large airport. You need to have it. But and I'm saying this from my perspective. There are some airports around the United States and the world that lean in like you do, and there's others that just put up blinders. Why do you think that is? When there's so much opportunity from a business perspective that we could do, there's so much opportunity from a passenger enhancement experience. Why do you think there's differentiating approaches?
Oh, Grayson, that's a trick question, buddy. In fairness, I have to defend my colleagues. It's not necessarily that they have blinders on. It is, I would say a lot of it comes down to the economics of running an airport. And in the US, best way to look at it is there are really kind of two kinds. One is oftentimes a city-owned asset. So you're working with city government to try to secure funding, to try to advance your product. And that's not necessarily viewed as a cohesive approach, right? On the other side, the other 50% are CVG-like, where we're an independent authority. We have a board that we report to. So like CVG, it suddenly looks like really a private entity that's responsible to shareholders, predominantly our board, but then our community stakeholders. Because we're an independent authority and act in a quasi-government manner, we still follow all of the government requirements to running an airport, but at the same time, we have freedom and flexibility to be a little bit more agile than perhaps our city brothers and sisters. So from that perspective, I would say it's very much a brand strategy of ours to lean in, to develop that product, to improve the product, and figure out what's the best means to do it. Now, I'd put a pin in it and say there is a new nuance in recent years. And you start looking at the New York airports, for example, JFK, LaGuardia, Newark. Many of those are actually P3 arrangements with international firms that are running those individual concourses or terminals. So when you do a P3 arrangement, you're bringing in outside influence and outside revenues to secure or support the development of that site. So not all airports across the US are in a P3 environment or a privatized environment. So yeah, we're a little more restricted in what we can and cannot do.
But what you clearly articulated is that in your role, you have flexibility. And it seems to me that the board is giving you flexibility to experiment. That's based on your track record. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about AI. You can't listen to an earnings call this season without AI coming up. And there are some companies that are obviously leaning all in on it. Others are getting disrupted, and some are saying, well, let's see where this goes. Since you have the flexibility, you have the track record of embracing new technologies, how is CVG thinking about AI today? How are you implementing it, and how do you see that changing in the future?
Yeah, okay, we're back to good, better, best. And first of all, you mentioned it. Credit to our board and to our CEO, Larry Crowder, for really leaning in and giving us not only the research and development lab to do what we're doing on a 7,700 acre campus, but to actually deploy at scale. So they very much understood when you're in this ecosystem and the businesses that they run, you fail fast and you fail forward. So not all of them are going to be perfectly knocking it out of the park every single time. Now, on the AI front, it is a brave new world, my friend. So trying to a daily basis, opening up my news feed, going, oh my gosh, where is this going? I would say, first of all, think about the security implications and really just the restrictions on what we were just talking about. How do we run our day-to-day business, and how do we run it better? So we're a classic environment of, we're dealing with aged infrastructure. How do we actually bring in more people than what our building was designed for, and really use new technology to figure out, let's eke every bit of efficiency out of this facility before we ever put a shovel in the ground and start building new buildings? Because we don't want to find ourselves where we did years ago, where we were that large hub. Suddenly the hub goes away and we have too much infrastructure that we're responsible for. That drives costs, and that may scare away, frankly, some companies that are interested. On that AI front, now think about camera vision. And I know that scares some of us. We're super sensitive about the biometrics aspect. So we're cautious in that respect. But we are interested in one of the more fascinating ones is, how are we doing turn management with our airline partners? So aircraft hits the deck, it taxis in and parks at the gate. And number one, does it park right away, or is it held out, waiting for an employee to marshal them in? That's not necessarily our employee. But if you don't park, immediately you start rationalizing, what is going on at this airport? Who's responsible for this? Yeah, we don't want that to happen. So we're back into this automation. And this is where camera technology, looking at that aircraft to see that it's at the gate waiting to be parked. If we start automating systems of letting that aircraft park itself with the crew, and then connecting the bridge, and then sending out the autonomous tug to unload. So you start to see this ecosystem where that camera capability is really the central nervous system of what we're trying to accomplish. And it's the brain that's speaking to our systems, all the way to the fact of, if you're the customer that's waiting inside the hold room and you're waiting to depart, and that camera system recognizes, wait a minute, the fueler hasn't shown up yet, notifying the fueler automatically. But it's going to take 15 minutes to upload, but we only have 5 minutes before departure. So through systems capabilities, it sends you a message to say, Grayson, we're terribly sorry. It looks like your flight's going to be approximately 10 minutes delayed. Can we offer you a coupon to the nearest beverage company to go get yourself a beverage while you're waiting? Now, I think you and I have both been in those situations where forward-leaning companies have really taken those kind of steps, but the rate of recidivism on that coupon is pretty low. However, your satisfaction is like, oh, wow, they really care about me. So how are we embracing that full spectrum of AI looking at the aircraft to Grayson sitting inside the lobby, waiting for his departing flight to make sure that you're always up to date and you're satisfied with your experience?
Because if the consumer has real-time information, okay, you're fine. So, okay, go to get a cup of coffee. Okay, great. Thank you for the cup of coffee. There's that satisfaction, and you take away the fear of not knowing, am I going to miss my flight? But when you look at computer vision, and it's an adjacent industry to yours, is you look at commercial trucking. And you're starting to see a lot of yards where the trucks go in to get unloaded. They're putting computer vision in there. And some statistics I've seen 20, 30, 40% increase in turnaround times because they know exactly what's coming in and what's going out. It seems to me that if you took that yard perspective, I know that you're on tarmac, but you can start to optimize every little thing that's going on, going back to the business again. that enhances your business.
Grayson, have you been hanging around our offices? Like, are you a plant? And here's why. Wow. So yes, that is absolutely the extrapolation that we have taken. So let's go back to that air traffic controller and the scope that they're looking at all of this air traffic. And remember when I said that we were an Amazon and DHL hub. So Amazon number one, Amazon Air number one hub in the Americas. DHL were the second largest hub. So those two originally started out together, where Amazon and DHL were working together to get 24/7 efficiency out of the DHL site until Amazon could build their new building. Well, now Amazon's up and running. So we have two major cargo carriers hubbed at one location, unlike any other airport, at least in the Americas. To your point, all right, so as those two companies continue to grow, because that's what CVG is excited to do with both of them, and based on where we're logistically located in the US, we are perfect for growth. So we reach 60%, 65% of the US population within an 8-hour drive. So that's rather significant. From that perspective, as these companies are growing, are they going to work together? Or frankly, do they even have to work together on those ground logistics vehicles, trucks, semis, lorries coming into our facility and parking, offloading, and exiting? No, they don't have to work together, nor do we expect them. But here we go, not to unlike the security checkpoint. Well, who's going to be the mediator? Who's going to be the ombudsman that's looking out not just for both of the businesses, but our local friends and family that live around the airport, that they're not bottlenecked behind truck traffic or trucks parked on the side of the highway, that it becomes really kind of a not so good experience for our regional partners outside the airport fence line. So yeah, absolutely, yes. The extrapolation is from curb front traffic monitoring to that aircraft monitoring to all of the points, entry points into the airport ecosystem where trucks could arrive and depart. And then ideally, we've already approached our regional transportation authorities to say, we really want to build this not just for CVG, but for the greater good, for the states of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, that we're seeing traffic come in and out, and we can really understand what's happening on our bridges, what's happening at our rest stops, and where the truck's transiting to. And if it works for us, what other ports, not airports, what other ports can it work for?
Because it's optimization. DHL's investing in robotics and automation. Amazon's investing in robotics and automation. And both have publicly stated in this public data that they have grand autonomy ambitions. And when you put that yard autonomy technology, yard computer vision technology, and when you get a delivery, let's just say hot dog or hamburger buns to go into the restaurant, that can go in there fully automated. So you're preparing for the future. Is that always one of the keys when you're looking at technologies? That you said it earlier in this conversation with the TSA and the Bluetooth of where it went. It seems like you're always preparing for the future when you're deploying a technology. It's like, okay, it's not just use case today. Oh, by the way, we can use that in the future. Is that how you're always thinking about this?
Oh, you bet. And it's a puzzle. So we have been actively through, I would say, kind of the Skunkworks approach, flying under that radar and grabbing the puzzle pieces. Now, have we put all of the puzzle pieces together yet? No, because frankly, we've learned the hard way. Not everyone is ready for how far ahead we are. So hold that puzzle piece until culturally the entire ecosystem is ready for that piece to be fit in carefully. It's also being sensitive to our partners, like the airlines. So at the end of the day, there are two sets of consumers. There are consumers that are using this as a business, using CVG as a business. So those are our airline partners, our regulators, TSA, FAA, CBP. And then there is the customer like you, the traveling consumer. So back to your question, when we go find a solution, it's not an automatic. It's number one, think about it like your investment portfolio. It's probably a good chance we're using it today, but the long-term investment is years away, or long-term return. It could be years away. So don't expect an immediate return on investment, part one. Part two is, who is it playing to? Which consumer is it playing to? So critically, I think for us, it's that airline partner. And look at what's happening today. From wearing my former airline hat, the two biggest cost drivers of any airline are labor and fuel. and what's happening with fuel right now. So if the airport is not actively trying to figure out how do I lower the fuel burn for my airline partners and lower that cost of operation for them at CVG, then I'm not necessarily pulling my weight in this industry. And same thing, that's why we talk about automation. What about on the labor side? It's not replacing labor. It's just replacing, frankly, existing gaps that we have today until such time that all of us agree, all right, can automation actually replace that position and put that person, that individual, into a higher, better cause? So that's the build out. And then ultimately, I think you can see the thread. If we're winning on the airline side and we're providing services exactly who our local consumer is looking for, then it's a win-win all the way around.
And then you have a growing business, and then your board is very happy at that standpoint. Brian, what's the next big trend we need to be watching for in the airport industry? I asked that because you clearly have your finger on the pulse.
Thanks, Grayson. I appreciate that. Truly, I would say that the obvious ones are, what does it imply for automation and AI? Because that's the piece that is going to make the US airports, and I will specifically call out US airports, more economically sound and more economically resilient to what's happening in our marketplace at any given time. And where we found the industry goes through upheavals, again, it's on at poor economic times. We have difficulties finding labor, and we have difficulties addressing fuel burn. So that's critical number one. Critical number two for us is this logistical insights. So we're starting to treat this, and this is where we start to kind of jump off into the bigger stratosphere. We're viewing us as critical infrastructure to the US. We have two major cargo partner carriers hubbed here. Right down the street in Louisville, about an hour and a half away, is UPS. Not too terribly far away from that is FedEx in Memphis. So you have quite a bit of e-commerce transported just through a two-state region, 3 airports, 4 major cargo carriers. What are we doing from a strategic defense at the US government level to treat these as defensible positions? So now, what's the big play? Cyber. All 3 of our airports have a huge cyber target on our back. So how are we working with the defense industry to make sure that we're leveling up on the latest and greatest cyber defense solutions on the commercial side of the house? So we've been trying to partner on the defense side on how do you do a tech transfer from defense into civilian life, and helping airports like us build a better ecosystem, build a better defensive infrastructure. And then that last part is, and this is the wild leap, it's quantum. So what does quantum mean to the future of aviation, which is super fascinating, I think, at SAE 25 on, looking ahead and looking in the crystal ball, building everything in a cyber physical world before we ever start constructing that product, and making sure that we're getting it down to zero defect or near zero defect before we ever build the product. That becomes super efficient modeling.
Because that's where it's going. It's going to simulation, and technologies and trends are going to change. And you're right about the region with FedEx, UPS, Amazon, DHL. You have a lot there, but you did forget, at least me, the most important one: Louisville Slugger. You make the world's best baseball bats in Louisville. So I just have to point that out.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Brian, this has been a awesomely insightful conversation. As we look to wrap up, what would you like the listeners to take away with them today?
Hey, Grayson, I got to tell you that the takeaway always is thank you. Thank you for being loyal customers to CVG. For those that have flown through CVG and really recognize, hopefully, what we've done for the industry and pivoting in a much more stable, resilient fashion. But then overall, just a credit to, and this might seem a little grandiose, but credit to humankind for just embracing aviation and not giving up. We've gone through some really significant challenges through that 25-year look back. 9/11, the pandemic, how many different challenges on the health scare concern. But we've been a resilient industry, And multiple industries have rallied around us to make sure that we recover in kind. And at the end of the day, it takes aviation to get us anywhere around the world pretty much in 48 hours or less, to make sure that we're making those human-to-human contacts, and we work out how to work best together. So that is a credit to all of us.
As you said earlier, it's an ecosystem. And to the listeners that are flyers, I've been through CVG many times. Won't tell you how many times, it's been more than a dozen. Go experience a wonderful airport experience. Today is tomorrow. Tomorrow is today. The future is the CVG airport. Brian, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you so much, Grayson. It has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Be sure to join us next week as we discuss the physical AI ecosystem with Qualcomm.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.